on America. And we begin another half hour of our coverage of the attack on America. It is Wednesday, September 12th, a day all of us will remember all over the world. From CBS News headquarters in New York City, I'm Melissa McDermott, and we do continue our coverage. The people of the United States are trying to come to grips with the fact that they are victims of the worst terrorist attack in history. 4 jetliners hijacked and used as flying bombs in an attack on America. Thousands of people are believed dead. At least 260 of those victims died aboard the doomed hijacked planes. And President Bush has vowed that the United States will not distinguish between the terrorists behind the acts and the people or countries who harbor them. The horror of the attacks unfolded on nationwide TV. CBS News correspondent Russ Mitchell gives us a look at how it all played out. In New York City, the desperate search for victims runs through the morning at the site where 2 hijacked commercial U.S. jetliners were used to ram the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Both towers, where 50,000 work, collapsed. A third building in the tower complex collapsed later in the day. President Bush says the death toll is in the thousands. A third hijacked jetliner crashed into the Pentagon, and a fourth, possibly being diverted to the Washington area, came down in Pennsylvania. All told, an estimated 285 dead on the hijacked planes alone. The FAA has ordered an unprecedented shutdown of air traffic nationwide at least through noon, and the U.S. military is on alert. And once again, put this in perspective, we're going to show you a timeline. The horror of the attacks unfolded on nationwide TV. CBS News correspondent Russ Mitchell gives us a look at how it all played out.
Thursday morning, the 11th of September, 2001.
It began as a shimmering late summer day.
WCBS News Time 8:48. It's traffic and weather together. Tom Kaminsky, Chopper 880.
All right, Pat, we are just currently getting a look at the World Trade Center. We have something that has happened here at the World Trade Center.
And within half an hour, became America's second Pearl Harbor.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended.
By now, you've seen the pictures. But it's been a long, agonizing, and confusing 12 hours.
Oh, it was chaos. It's something out of a movie.
So, briefly, here's what we know about exactly what happened. 8:48 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, hijacked en route from Boston to Los Angeles, slams into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, 2/3 of the way up the 110-story building.
We had seen a fireball, and I can tell you it appears as though something has gone into the World Trade Center.
20 minutes later, at 9:08 a.m., a United Airlines flight, number 175, also from Boston to Los Angeles, tips its wings and crashes into the South Tower.
Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
An incredible fireball, so remarkable, it didn't even seem real.
Looked like a plane rammed into the second building.
35 minutes after that, 9:43 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, scheduled to fly to Los Angeles from Dulles Airport outside Washington, dives into the Pentagon, destroying one of the building's 5 sides.
I happened to hear a plane come through. It sounded like it was running normal.
10:10 a.m., the 4th hijacked plane, United 93 from Newark to San Francisco, crashes in a remote area 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh.
It just come down like it was going to land, but instead of landing, it just went nose straight into the ground.
In a little more than an hour, 4 horrific plane crashes, hundreds believed dead. But far worse was yet to come. At 10:05 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center, possibly weakened beyond hope by the plane's impact, collapses. People can be seen jumping from the high floors.
The building came just rumbling down. It was like a war zone.
10:28 a.m., and the North Tower, choked with smoke and flames from its upper floors, disintegrates. Smoke and ash from the destruction combined to make parts of New York City look like ancient Pompeii after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Rescue firemen were coated with thick white dust.
This is terrible. We lost tons of guys. We lost tons of guys.
Cars were under blankets of ash. Rescuers were just happy to be alive. As for the death toll, even tonight there were no hard numbers. But New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani feared it might extend into the thousands. Half a world away, there was a far different reaction. Gunmen appearing to applaud today's terrorism. But Palestine Liberation Organization leader Yasser Arafat did not join in.
We are completely shocked. Completely shocked.
In Afghanistan, a spokesman for the ruling Taliban, who provides sanctuary for terrorist leader Osama bin Laden, said he could not have been behind the attack.
Everybody out! Everybody out!
Back home, it was as if war had been declared.
Ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families.
President Bush spoke to the nation, first briefly in Florida, and later from a military base in Louisiana.
The resolve of our great nation is being tested. But make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
Then, heading to another military base outside Omaha.
The Air Force being evacuated, they need to go home.
All international flights into the U.S. were diverted to Canada. The FAA stopped every single commercial airplane flight for the first time ever. As the day ended in New York City, another skyscraper in the World Trade Center complex crumbled. Building number 7, 47 stories high.
Russ Mitchell reporting. Now, among the dead, the wife of U.S. Solicitor General Ted Olson was aboard the jetliner that crashed into the Pentagon. It is hard to even imagine this moment I'm about to tell you about that took place between this woman and her husband. Barbara Olson called her husband as the plane was being hijacked, and this happened with a number of the passengers and their loved ones on the ground. Also, a passenger on American Airlines Flight 11, Doug Stone. His son is Zach Stone.
I know this is difficult.
I know.
How did you get the word?
I was woken up by one of his best friends.
One of his best friends?
Yeah.
Was your dad often traveling from Boston?
Yeah, he lives there primarily, but he's worked back and forth for the last few months.
Mm-hmm. And he was due to be home for a while?
Yeah, he's probably been here for about 2 or 3 weeks before he went back again.
Mm-hmm. And your mother also was gone, I understand?
Yeah, she had to work in Texas.
She knows, obviously, as well.
Yeah, I talked to her. She's driving home.
She's driving home. If it's not too painful, your dad was obviously is your father and loved him very much.
Yeah, of course. Doesn't love her dad. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. God, he was great to me.
When you heard when you heard what happened, did you have any inkling at all that your father could have been on one of those planes?
Yeah. Well, they called me. I woke up to it. And it was the same. He's taken that flight 100 times. I've taken that flight. I've traveled back there to visit him. And, yeah, I figured it was this flight. I mean, I was just waiting for the confirmation, but we got it.
Yeah. Okay, I thank you for talking to us. I mean, you have any other thoughts about this whole crazy thing? I mean, for a young man, it must be difficult to understand what terrorism does.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's horrible. I don't know why they think they have to do it when it's, I don't know why they attack us just because they think we're siding with someone. I don't see what our people have to do with it, but they do what they want.
You never thought anything like this could happen, obviously?
I mean, I knew it could happen, but I didn't expect it, obviously. But it can happen, yeah.
We talked earlier about cell phones, communications between loved ones on the doomed flights and the ones on the ground. As you can imagine, all over the world tonight, people are calling the cell phones of people, their loved ones they believed were in the World Trade Center at the time of the attacks. They only hope no one answering those cell phones, then hopefully the ringing phone could be what brings rescuers to their loved ones. Overseas, one of the many world leaders expressing support for the United States is Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a speech televised throughout Russia, he condemned the attacks and offered support to President Bush. Condolences are also coming from the Russian people to Americans. CBS News correspondent Elizabeth Palmer is in Moscow. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Over
Overnight, visibly shocked and grieving Russians placed flowers and messages of support outside the American embassy in Moscow. We remember the terrorist bombings of apartment buildings here, says Anya, and we know the fear people feel when they aren't even safe in their own homes. When I first saw the pictures, I couldn't believe my eyes, said Edouard. I thought I was watching a science fiction movie. Shortly after the first plane crashed, Russia's Security Council met in emergency session. The national militia has been put on alert, and airspace over Moscow and St. Petersburg has been closed. President Vladimir Putin spoke on Russian television to express his sympathy and his outrage. This goes beyond the United States' national borders, he said. It's a wanton act of contempt against all humanity. I want to tell the American people on behalf of Russia, we are with you. We share and feel your pain. We support you. Coverage of the unfolding tragedy was carried live in special programming on Russian television most of the day and dominated the headlines in newspapers. This morning, the American embassy in Moscow is under heavier guard than usual, and the flag is flying at half-mast. The Russian government also says that it's got a plane full of emergency rescue experts waiting at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow should the American government call for backup assistance. Melissa.
You mentioned the embassy, Elizabeth. What about other U.S. residents in Russia? Are there any other preventative measures being taken to help them?
I know that the American embassy is working overtime to make sure that they're in contact with the United States, despite communication difficulties. People were trying to call yesterday and only meeting silence on the lines because I guess they're terribly jammed, and also some of the communications equipment has been destroyed. So their first preoccupation, obviously, is to reassure people who have loved ones who lived or worked in that part of Manhattan that they're okay, or if there's bad news, that it arrives as quickly as possible. Melissa.
Now, Putin had said in his speech that he knows how America feels, I assume comparing this to Chechnya. Talk more about that.
Well, Russia, I think Russians were especially moved and shocked by this. First of all, perhaps because they never expected it to happen. America won the Cold War. America, in Russians' eyes and minds, is largely impregnable. So for this to happen was unthinkable. Furthermore, the Russians have had a particularly violent century themselves.
Can I ask another question?
They had a series of terrorist attacks here in Moscow. Apartment buildings were blown up, and hundreds of people died. And so I think that they feel as if there's some kinship here with what Americans are feeling today. Melissa.
Elizabeth, there were talks going on regarding the U.S. pulling out of the ABM treaty as news of the attack spread, and we understand that's when Russia signaled it's no longer seeking to talk the U.S. out of withdrawing. How is this affecting U.S. and Russia relations?
Vladimir Putin and President Bush made it clear that one of the things they do see eye to is some sort of international cooperation to control international terrorism. One can only guess at this stage. It's very early, but at least this probably has solidified that consensus, and perhaps will give them some more solid footing to go forward on with the much thornier issue of where to go on missile shield and how Russia might or might not agree to cooperate. Melissa.
Elizabeth, what are you hearing from Russians as far as who they think may be behind this?
Russians have got a war in Chechnya, as you mentioned, and there are Islamic militants involved in that war who precipitated that war. So naturally, Russians' suspicions turn to Islamic militants. They hear a lot about Osama bin Laden, and I guess that name is being thrown around as often here as it is in America. But certainly, they feel as if they've got an Islamic extremist threat on their own borders, and they're very conscious of it at the moment, conscious enough to fear copycat attacks here in Russia.
Well, finally, Elizabeth, the Russian people have held some resentment in the past for American efforts to reform the economy, among other things. Though today, as an American in Russia or a Canadian in Russia, what are you seeing as far as how they are responding to you?
Just an outpouring of sympathy and grief. I received many phone calls last night from Russian friends who
we're afraid that this might be the touchstone to another war. This is a nation that's particularly sensitive to the ravages of war, but more than anything else, they just wanted to express condolence and real sympathy for all the victims and their families, and America too, which has suffered such a blow to its sense of self and its sense of its ability to protect itself, really. Melissa.
CBS's Elizabeth Palmer from Moscow. Elizabeth, thank you.
A pleasure.
Now, keeping in mind that all civilian aircraft remain grounded until noon today at the earliest, no airport in the United States is immune from the fear that the East Coast crashes spawned, and that certainly includes the West Coast field that was the destination of so many of the doomed passengers. Sandra Hughes is at Los Angeles International Airport.
Families of the American Airlines victims, surrounded by tight security, were whisked to a private area to be counseled by grief specialists from the airline and the Salvation Army.
There's very little that one can say at a time like this. We simply want to be with them and to comfort them as best we can.
But some people just needed to hold on. Confused passengers looking for guidance stood stunned. Most turned away as all domestic flights were canceled. International flights were to be diverted to nearby Ontario Airport until it closed too.
And I got here and I read the board and everything was canceled. So I was like, okay. So yeah, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
Most had just heard the news of the plane crashes and wondered how many had been killed. The scene was chaotic. Police tape held back anyone who tried to get inside the United Terminal as the LAPD bomb squad suited up outside. At a nearby power plant, a suspicious package brought panic. It was nothing. By mid-morning, the entire airport was evacuated.
The FAA mandated early on that we close down LAX and Ontario airports in California, which we have done.
2,000 flights per day passed through the Los Angeles airport. Officials here said they had hoped to reopen the airport sometime today, but are waiting for official word from the FAA. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
A perspective from the West Coast. The targets, the World Trade Center, though, in New York, and the Pentagon near Washington, of course, were on the East Coast. But officials up and down the West Coast found themselves scrambling all day as well, as Sandra said. Now, it took 7 years, or one person who's familiar with terrorism is former Secretary of Defense William Cohen. And Cohen served, of course, in the Clinton administration and spoke with CBS News correspondent Dan Rather.
Senator, thanks for being with us tonight. You've dealt with this problem over the years as a member of the Armed Services Committee, then as Secretary of Defense. As the hours wear on, what are the most important things for us as Americans to have in mind?
Well, the most important thing is that this country is going to respond. It will respond in a way that will certainly send a message to those who have committed this act of monumental and pure evil. Secondly, I think it's also clear that we'll take every measure possible to prevent a similar type of attack in the future, understanding that we have come to grips with a reconciliation of two conflicting interests in this country. How we can defend and protect our people and how we can defend and protect our civil liberties. And we've got to engage in a very intensive debate and dialogue on how we reconcile those two very important ideals and needs for our country. But I think President Bush sent the right message tonight. It's one of resolve, determination that the long arm of justice is going to reach out and touch those individuals and those groups who support the individuals involved, and most importantly, the countries that give safe harbor to the terrorists who are committing these acts. So I think that the American people are going to certainly coalesce around the President and his national security team and the entire Congress. You will see, in my judgment, a consolidation of American opinion. They will be unified. They will, I hope, really be stirred and shaken from any sense of lethargy that we may have been experiencing in recent years about our security interests, and to be shaken from our apathy, to become deeply involved in supporting the men and women who support us on the front lines. And that's not only the military men and women, and they are very important, but also, as you saw on that screen, the firemen, the policemen, the paramedics, the medical professionals. We're all in this together. And that's the one message that's going to come out of all of this, that we are going to be united in a way that perhaps we haven't seen since World War II.
Mr. Secretary, you were part of the decision-making process when President Clinton made the decision to retaliate for the bombing of our embassies in East Africa. We sent the cruise missiles, Sudan, and Afghanistan. In retrospect, which is all we can talk about, a mistake? Put that in context for us.
Not a mistake. It was a very strong message that we were seeking to send, that if you are going to train and prepare to carry out acts of terrorism against the United States, here or abroad, then the United States is going to take whatever measures we need to prevent that from occurring in the future. This was an act of prevention. We knew from intelligence sources that they were planning more acts of terrorism. We knew from intelligence sources that they were trying to get their hands on a weapon of mass destruction. And we took action accordingly. And I believe that we will see very strong action coming from this president and this administration, supported not only by the people of this country, but I believe by nations the world over, who also see that terrorism is not confined by any geographical boundaries. It can reach out and destroy the lives and the lifestyle of millions of people all across this globe. So this is a universal threat, and we need to have the support of our allies and our friends and make them understand that when we take action, it needs to be concerted, it needs to be concentrated, and it needs to be consistent and with their support.
Now, you've heard personal accounts all day, and you've seen the video over and over of what it looked like when the World Trade Center Twin Towers collapsed, and also Tower number 7 collapsed. I stood on the 48th floor of my apartment building 20 blocks away and, too, watched as it all happened. And it was hard to fathom that the World Trade Center, which took 7 years to build, could crumble so easily in such a short amount of time, just seconds. CBS News correspondent Troy Roberts has more on the scene of the chaos.
It started with a plane crash.
It's like, oh my God, it did. A plane crashed into the World Trade Center.
Literally out of the blue.
It's clear as day. AA on the wing, just going, I'm like, what the heck is that? Is it filming a movie here or something? Then all of a sudden, bam.
Brothers Jeff and Scott Such were there, ground zero, with their video camera.
You're good right here in the corner. Stay in the corner.
So after the first strike, you're not thinking terrorist attack, are you?
You're thinking that this is a really huge accident, that I should be seeing this, so we just decided to go even closer.
The brothers continued shooting this videotape. As people trapped in the building began falling from the windows.
It almost looked as if someone had just, like, stepped backwards and had fallen through a window.
What's this other jet doing? But the terrorists weren't done. 20 minutes later, another plane, another tower, another devastating attack.
Boom, just a loud explosion, and then you just look up at the sky, because that's where it came from. The noise came from above. You look up, and it's just like confetti in the sky.
And that was just the beginning. On the ground, chaos as one of the famed Twin Towers crumbles. Firefighters and rescue workers attack the other tower, still standing, still burning. Who knows how many trapped inside.
So stock onto your trucks, make sure you got flashlights. If you don't have any lights, then let me know.
Oh, no! Then that tower collapses too.
And we had some time to get some of the people out, but then there was those secondary explosions and then the subsequent collapses. So I don't know how many people were in there. I know there was a lot of firefighters, a lot of public safety personnel were in there.
You call her and you tell her, let her hear your voice. She's going to need to hear your voice. Just like you need to hear my voice, I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you. Bye. See you later. I love you.
All day long, more fallout.
Because it might be a bomb in the school, maybe.
A reported bomb threat. A dangerous gas leak.
This is Ed Sullivan. I want that building evacuated.
All civilians, please head north of Moore Street.
Then, a nearby building collapses from the day's damage.
You are watching Building 7 at the World Trade Center collapse.
Amid the destruction and devastation, though, one remarkable thing did happen. Today's tragedy brought out the best in a city not always known for its kindness and humanity. 3 hours after the attack, area residents have put out an open call for volunteers to search the rubble for any signs of possible survivors.
They're here to volunteer. They're a laborer, they're a plumber, they're an electrician, whatever they are, to stay with you guys. If they're medical, they go across the street.
We're CPR and first aid trained.
You're prepared to go into that rubble?
Yeah, unfortunately we are. You know, whatever we can do to help out. I know there's not enough people in the city of New York to do it. I mean, it's a mess over there.
These volunteers say there is just one thing they want, something uniquely New York: street justice, tough and immediate.
I hope they're sending planes over there right now. Take care of business.
The focus all day on the East Coast because that's where the terrorists were able to hit their marks. But on the West Coast, all up and down the West Coast, they were scrambling as well. Bill Whitaker has more on that.
Fearing the nation's second largest city might also be a target, workers fled downtown high-rises, leaving the heart of Los Angeles a ghost town. With the Pentagon in flames, giant West Coast defense contractors, Boeing and Raytheon, sent Los Angeles workers home for safety's sake. FBI agents with fingers at the ready ring the main federal building. City government, law enforcement, indeed the entire city was on high alert.
We believe that whatever could have happened in New York could very likely happen here.
The busy borders with Mexico and Canada intensified security and remained open, but little else did. Urban icons, the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, even Seattle's Space Needle closed down, leaving tourists stunned.
To Pearl Harbor magnified 10 times.
There's heightened alert on the Golden Gate and Bay Bridges, San Francisco's main links. Even Disneyland, the self-proclaimed happiest place on earth, joined other California amusement parks and closed down in fear.
Obviously, what they want is to shut down the country, and that's exactly what they've done.
I mean, it's scary to think that something like this could happen in the United States. I mean, you feel safe here, and now you don't feel as safe.
The West's water and energy suppliers are taking no chances either. At Hoover Dam, boats and bomb-sniffing dogs are on patrol. Armed guards stand outside the San Onofre nuclear plant near San Diego. Up the road, Marine Camp Pendleton is on Threat Condition D, the highest level of alert, meaning an attack is expected or imminent.
Right now, they are checking every car that's on base. We are restricting access if you're not a military affiliated.
In Los Angeles, Muslim groups citing death threats said don't blame all for the alleged actions of a few.
The pain of this country is, in fact, our pain.
Saying there's clearly too much hatred, the Crystal Cathedral in Orange County invited people of all faiths to come together and pray for the victims of terror. So here, like the rest of the country, there are prayers for the victims and concern for the country's future and safety. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles, for Up to the Minute.
And we're going to take a break at this moment as the information continues to come in. We're going to take a check at that, update it, give you the latest information. CBS News coverage of the attack on America continues in just a moment.
I'm alive. I'm going to go home. I'm going to hug my wife. And thank God I'm alive. I'm 69, but I can still run. Tower 2 collapsed into Tower 1. Within minutes after that, we were ordered out. This is a federal building. That's a federal building. The safety can happen here. Get out of here. All the way to the ground. We do not have a signal on our Nextel, so I can't get ISP. Is there somebody who can hear me off this radio?
watching continuing CBS News coverage of the attack on America.